Afternoon, ladies and gents, good afternoon. We're here on the corner of Attila Ut and Dózsa György, making our way over to the statue of Dózsa György. There he is, the man himself with a bird on his head. And here is his peasant army beside him. Oh, Mr. Dózsa, how do you do? How do you do, Mr. Dózsa? Bator, Bayosu, Sekai Ember, Dózsa György, and the peasant rebellion. Oh, what a rebellion it was! But first, our story begins with a chaotic transfer of power. In 1490, in Hungary, we had an absolute shit show when it came to picking the next leader. Here's some of that classic Budapest yellow, Habsburg era, all over the facades. To die for. Absolutely to die for. A little lemon peel on the side here. Yellow is really the city of Budapest. So 1490, King Mátyás dies, Mátyás Király. And when he dies, this is a significant watershed moment for the history of Hungary. King Mátyás, just like Attila the Hun, was a strong, centralized, charismatic leader that had pretty much all of the power in the state within his grasp. And this was to the detriment of the nobility and the baronial class. And after Mátyás dies, they really want to reclaim some of their former powers. They decide on a fairly impotent leader, a Jagiello leader, a Polish Jagiello leader who's the king of Bohemia at the time, and his name is Második Ulászló, Ulászló II. He has a nickname, and his nickname is something along the lines of Ulászló Dobrze. It's Polish, Dobrze, for very well. Because that's what Ulászló did. He just said very well to everything.
Hey, Ulászló, it's me, Norby the Noble. I'm just wondering, would you mind allowing us to cruelly and brutally repress the peasantry for the next 20 years?
Dobrze. Második Ulászló vagyok. Lovely Sisi, Empress Sisi. Wow, what a woman she was. Can't wait to do an episode on her. Death at the hands of an Italian anarchist in 1898. Woof. So the nobles are continuously increasing their power at the expense of both Ulászló and, more significantly, the peasantry in 1490s, 1500s Hungary. 1490s, 1500s Hungary, not the best place to live. A lot of snobby nobles running around, and there is a particularly difficult run of famine and plague and discontent amongst the masses. Ivo Chanok. Stinky water there. Stinky water courtesy of Rudash. I love the stinky water there. Yeah, why not? Let's get some. Not bad. Tastes like deviled eggs. 7.3.
In 1513, Pope Julius II dies, and a man by the name of Backotes Tamás, aka Slick Tommy Backotes, attempts to become the first ever Hungarian pope.
He loses to a Medici, Pope Leo X. Always gonna happen. You try to become a pope against the Medici in the 16th century, probably not gonna work out for you. And Pope Leo, he throws Tommy Backotes kind of a poison bone, if you will, since he forces him essentially to go back to Hungary and fight a crusade against the Ottomans. The Tommy Backotes does not want to fight, but he sends him out there with a papal bull in hand, and he says, Tommy, go fight a crusade for me, do it against the Ottomans, protect your frontier, protect Christianity, all the rest, usual crusade stuff. So Tommy Backotes, he goes back to start this crusade, and he needs someone to lead it. And he's looking around, who can I find? Who does he see but Dózsa György? Who was Dózsa György?
Dózsa György was born in 1470 in the Transylvanian town of Dalnok. He dreamt of being a soldier one day, just as his father was before him. And he got his opportunity, becoming a hero in 1513 in defense of the fortress at Nándorfehérvár, where he bested a notorious Turkish villain in a duel.
Here's some of that real grippy, grimy, dirty yellow, courtesy of Kerületben Nyolcadik, one of my favorite districts when everything is taken into account. So back to Dózsa György. Második Ulászló grants him a place amongst the nobility. And he takes advantage of it, he gets his own crest, he heads back to Dalnok like a conquering hero. And as 1513 turns to 1514, who comes and knocking? None other than Tommy Backotes. And he's like, Dózsa, I got a crusade. What can you do for me? And what does Dózsa György say?
Hartsolunk.
And now the crusade is on. They get a handsome young Franciscan friar by the name of Lawrence to come help them with recruitment. Long story short, by the middle of April 1514, Dózsa György has about 40,000 soldiers ready to go fight this crusade on the frontier of Magyarország. Gorgeous facade here. I've never been in this tiny little square. Szűzutca. Very nice. Now, who makes up this 40,000 strong? It's a mix, really. A mixed bag of mismatched men. Peasants and serfs and the collectively deprived. The group that is known as the jobbágyság, essentially the peasantry. But there's also some other people in the army. Notably, some men of somewhat experienced military combat. Because you have some of the remnants of King Mátyás's Black Army, which was a fearsome band of mercenaries from around Europe. And after Mátyás died, obviously the nobility wanted to get rid of his preeminent fighting force, so they sent them on a foolhardy mission down against the Ottomans in an undermanned crusade with no backup, and pretty much left them all to slaughter. So the ones that survived, they come in onto Dózsa György's side in order to get some revenge, and probably because they had nothing better to do, to be perfectly honest with you. And then alongside them, you have the Hajduk. And the Hajduk are really like a glorified band of sheep security guards. Later on, particularly as the 16th century turned to the 17th century, the Hajduks would become a royal regiment in their own right. But at this point, they're essentially, as I mentioned, glorified sheep security guards. But they come in and they join the ranks of Dózsa György as well. And they're well used to fighting the Ottomans because they do it all the time when they have to protect the sheep in the frontier, in the borderland. I forgot how much I love this city. What a place. What a place, Budapest. So now we got a little juice cooking. Dózsa György has his army. Lawrence and the Franciscans are recruiting more and more peasants from all over the Hungarian lands, even places like today Slovakia, Transylvania, aka Erdély, as the Hungarians call it. But now the nobles are starting to grow a little bit skittish because they see all of these peasants, all of these people with nothing to lose, gathering under one banner, the banner of Dózsa György. And they're well armed as well, because this is a licensed crusade. Pope Leo gave the papal bull. So you can imagine being a noble, you see all these peasants armed to the teeth and ready to go, and you're like, listen, Tommy Backotes, we love you, guy, but can you please call off this crusade? Let's do it another time. And Backotes, he's not so sure. He's already got all the people riled up. But eventually the nobility, they really put the pressure on him because it's springtime and they need their peasants, they need their jobbágyság to work the land. And eventually he relents, calls off the crusade. Just like that, it's done. One of the best spots in all of Budapest. The Fűvészkert. Love that place. Too bad it's closed. Too bad, too bad, too bad. What are you gonna do? Back to Dózsa György, because now the peasantry is irate. They thought they had a crusade, they don't. And Dózsa György, you know, he's pretty pissed off also. He had command of this whole thing. And Dózsa György, his beloved brother Gergely, and the friar Lawrence team up to lead the peasant army in a rebellion against the nobility, the jobbágyság, against the nemesség. Ho ho ho, it's cooking up. It is cooking up in the countryside. There's really two factions to this rebellion. I shouldn't say two factions, more like two directions. One is up north towards Budapest, the surrounding Pest megye, as well as some other counties in the vicinity. And the other one is down to the southwest in the Alfolds, in the Great Plain. The northern rebellion snuffed out pretty quickly. The southeastern rebellion, that's the one I want to focus on because that's where Dózsa György, Lawrence, and Gergely Dózsa, that's where all of them are located. And they are leading a rebellion, steaming towards the Maros River. They score a series of successes at various fortresses along the river, and then they get to a place called Apatfalva. And the nobility strike back. And they strike back under the leadership of a man named Nyolcadik Bácsori István. And at Apatfalva, Nyolcadik Bácsori István kinda gets the best of Dózsa György. This is on May 23rd. The next day, at May 24th, Bátyori István was ready to gloat and rub it in Dózsa György's face and throw a big feast, throw a big banquet inside the castle at Nagylak. Nagylak is a nearby town with a fortress on the Maros River. Dózsa György, he catches wind of this and he launches a sneak attack invasion into Nagylak on the day of the celebration, and it is a bloody massacre. Pretty much everyone dies. They execute or murder almost everyone inside the castle. I think they even burned it down. And Nyolcadik Bátyori István, he escapes with his tail between his legs to head back to the fortress at Temesvar on the border of Transylvania, aka Erdély, and the southeast of Hungary. Now Dózsa György, Gergely, and Lawrence, and the Hajdúks, and the Black Army, and the peasants, and the serfs, they're steaming along the Maros River, making incredible haste in the direction of Temesvar. Finally, they get to the fortress at Temesvar, and it's surrounded on all sides by water and a villainous looking swamp. They're putting the boys to work. They're having them drain the swamp, drain the rivers, drain the swamp, get some irrigation, find a dry patch where they can bring in all the cannons that they've collected along this conquest already. And so Bátyori István is quaking in his britches, and he has to ring up an old friend, an old associate of his, but not really, because they're actually kind of enemies. And that man is Szapolyai János, the would-be Hungarian king one day. And Szapolyai János, he's the voivode of Transylvania, so he's the big boss. Szapolyai János, nagy boss, nagy funuk. And now Szapolyai János, he's fighting a crusade himself down south. Not really a crusade, more just like a mercenary expedition to keep the troops happy. They're in Bulgaria, they're fighting the Turks. They storm back up north to heed the call to respond to Bátyori István, and they meet the army of Dózsa György outside the walls at Temesvar. Ho, the water spider mural. There we go, people. This is more brown than yellow, but we got a little tinge of yellow in there. Very interesting. Probably, I'm gonna say mid-70s on this one, at a guess, at a lark. So they meet beneath the walls at Temesvar, and it's a hard battle. It's a really, really hard battle. You can't deny just how vigorous and ferocious and fearsome these Dózsa György peasants were at this point. They had nothing to lose. They were in for everything they had. And after a few hours, the army of Szapolyai János inevitably gets the best of the army of Dózsa György. And many are killed, many are wounded, many lay strewn on the battlefields. Dózsa György, his brother Gergely, and Lawrence are all captured alive. And the nobles are ready to stake their revenge against the Dózsas. The death of Dózsa György and his brother Gergely is perhaps the single most grotesque and gruesome case of medieval murder ever recorded. Really, 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 really perverse. Wow, interesting red. Oh, there's a Seikai flag up there in the top. That is a Seikai flag. Wow. The blue, gold, and crescent moon. For Dózsa György, he was a Seikai man. Here's Keleti, Pályaudvar, one of the biggest train stations in town, if not the biggest. A lot of yellow there. And another yellow building. So much yellow. So much yellow. Okay, let's get across. Oh, there's the train. Not taking the train, but there it is. And here we have arrived to Dózsa György út, just in time for all the grisly details of his death. The nobles forced Dózsa György to strip down naked, and then they thrust him upon a burning metal throne with a burning metal crown atop his head. A truly sick and sadistic way to coronate the peasant king, the conquered hero. And then they had 14 of Dózsa György, 14 of his most loyal men come in, and they were forced to eat strips of his burning flesh. They were forced to eat Dózsa György pretty much alive. And while he was still alive, his beloved brother Gergely was brought in. And Gergely was quartered and slaughtered right in front of Dózsa György as the life drained out of his eyes. Now, many historians disagree with just how brutal and horrific the execution of Dózsa György actually was. For later sources, later poetic sources really, such as Petőfi Sándor with his 1847 A nép nevében, a famous poem about this incident, they would say that Dózsa György was on a burning throne. Whoa. That is sick. Wow. Nothing quite like that to interrupt a good, brutal execution story. Many have taken this literally, to mean that Dózsa György was actually burned alive on an iron throne. Questions of cannibalism and fire aside, what we do know is that there was some reprehensible execution. It was really a warning sign to the peasants and the landless serfs, the haiduks, and the remainder of the Black Army of King Mátyás. It was a warning not to try this again, that insurrection was to be quelled at all costs. An empty heroes square, don't often see that. Dózsa György, not amongst the heroes of Hero Square. King Mátyás is, along with Hunyadi János and a few others. But Dózsa György is most certainly a Hungarian national hero. A very cruel, wicked, and brutal story. But a story of a man who stood up for what he believed in. A story of a man who inspired loyalty. And a story of a man who embarked on a mission to do the impossible. And he failed. He failed in probably the most heinous way you could ever imagine. But hey, at least he had to go.
Thank you ever so much for watching, folks. I hope that you enjoyed that episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. It is an honor to be back in Budapest and delving once more within the depths of the Magyar Történelem.